Welcome back to another post-media Ottawa-Senators panel. I'm Bruce Garriock with Steve Warren of the Sens Nation podcast. Steve, thanks for coming in. As we speak today, the Senators are coming off a 5-2 loss to the Anaheim Ducks on the road Tuesday night, and they face the LA Kings on Wednesday night to wrap up the California portion of this trip. Losing to them is actually not a bad thing at this point, but Marcus Högberg goes into the net after coming back from Sweden. I was a little surprised at that decision.
Well, and to keep him in for as long as they did in that game, allowing 5 goals on 8 shots, that's a terrible start. And I was a little surprised as well, but I guess it was a case of, throw him back into the fire, see if see how he's ready to roll. But yeah, I agree with you. I thought give him a little more time to get his feet wet. Coaches always have. That's the great thing about coaching. Everybody has got their own concepts, their own ideas, and very often, I'm sure, if DJ Smith were to explain that to you, you'd go at the end of it, you go into the conversation wondering, is that the right thing to do? And then you come away from the conversation saying, oh, okay, that makes sense.
I look at the situation that they're in with their goaltenders right now, Steve, and I say, we're not sure we're going to see Anders Nielsen again this season. Do you think Marcus Högberg is in a position to establish himself as a starter down the stretch?
I think he's got the opportunity to do so. It's still, he's had basically, a third of a season. He's impressed us in that time. It's difficult to say at this stage. It's one thing to go out there as a young goalie to come up and show your stuff when there's really no pressure, because you're not really anywhere within the same time zone of a playoff spot. When this team takes another step forward next year, and I believe they will in this rebuild, and maybe start hanging around the bottom of the standings as far as playoffs go, that's when the pressure sets in, and that's a whole different psyche completely. I think he's got an opportunity right now. I'm 50-50 on it. Anders Nielsen impressed me, but there's also some holes in his game. Högberg is very young, and he hasn't shown us what he can do yet. It's kind of a wait-and-see thing, but I give Högberg a 50-50 chance of maybe being the starter of this team next year.
Well, it's interesting. One of the things that people are certainly watching right now, Steve, is the results. And the Ottawa Senators are going to be a lottery team. And at this point, they have the San Jose Sharks pick, and they have their own first-round pick. And who knows, they may even have the Islanders in that lottery in some way, but that one is top 3 protected. So one of the things we wanted to do while we had you here, Steve, was we wanted to run the draft lottery. And so I've got my trusty phone here.
This is good science right here.
Yeah, and so here we're going to zoom in on the lottery. And so the Ottawa Senators, with their 2 picks, have a 23% chance. And we'll run the lottery, and the winner is the Ottawa Senators.
All right.
There you go. So
welcome to town, Alexi.
Well, and they would take Alexi Lafreniere with that selection. Do you think, though, that's what people are going to be watching down the stretches? You want the team. People want the team to have success, but I think they look as much at the San Jose Sharks results as they do at the Ottawa Senators every morning.
Yeah, I think we're in a stage now so late in the season as well that on top of everything else, even if you have the thickest of rose-colored glasses as a Sens fan and you watch every game no matter what and say, I refuse to talk about tanks, I want to win every game. There are 12 games. As we speak right now, there are 12 games left in the season. I think you now have to acknowledge, even if you're that most optimistic fan, you have to say to yourself, the best thing for this organization is outcomes like in Anaheim, where you badly outshoot the opposition, but you lose the hockey game, and you're that much closer to what happened just there and winning a lottery.
Well, because, I think a lot of people have the NHL draft in Montreal circled on their calendar because it stands to be a game-changing day for this organization now. I want to talk to you a little bit about that 3rd pick they have in the round. Do you think they use that pick to get a player of some sort, or do they make a selection? I think, We've talked a lot about them using the second round picks to get players. Do you think they could use that first round pick to get a player? The Islanders one, I mean.
Oh, I think so. I think everything is on the table. You want to expedite this rebuild, and sometimes you can pull that off by not just that pick, but maybe there's a prospect in the organization that still has cachet out there. Maybe a guy like a Logan Brown that some GMs remain excited about. I know the Sens still have high hopes for him as well, but maybe there's an opportunity there where you can package that pick up with a prospect and bring in a guy who's maybe, more NHL ready. And it's one thing to have all these draft picks, but it's going to be 3 years along the way. Lafreniere may be the exception there. He can contribute right away. But everybody else, it's a question mark. Is this fan base going to be patient for 3-4 years to watch all these picks? I think we're going to start, the fan base is going to want to start to see some level of progress in this rebuild as of next season, and they can get there a little quicker if you consider deals like the one you mentioned.
So when we spoke last week, we had Wayne Scanlon here, Steve. The news about Jim Little being let go as CEO after just 54 days had just broken. We've had some time to digest what happened here. Post Media reported on the weekend that Jim Little's wife made some allegations on a blog as well that also contributed to his dismissal. Obviously, there was a very aggressive phone call between him and owner Eugene Melnyk that started an investigation into Jim Little's past. You look at the situation that the Senators are in right now. I guess the easiest question is, what's your sense on all of this?
Well, I have to go with what I know, and I know that Jim Little came forward with an admission in a period where we've all had new jobs, and that's your probation period, that first 3 months. He admitted to yelling at his boss and swearing at his boss. And I think we all can agree that that will get you fired sometimes. And that's what I know happened versus everything else, which is blogs from ex-wives, reports of this. This is the thing I know. And if you ask me, okay, was there something improper done? That's all speculation, and I could react to that. However, I do know that Jim Little did something that was fireable. So even though this, in his wake, there is executive after executive who's either resigned or been fired, I measure this one as it lays, and I say to myself, Jim Little did something that got him fired.
And I think part of your job is if whether you're the CEO or or a manager, is you have people to report to. You can't, whether you like reporting to that person or not. You knew what you had signed up for. You knew you reported to that person. You have to live by the rules.
Every employee does. I don't want to say that the Sens and Eugene Melnyk are blameless in this. Again, I think there probably was some pushing and shoving verbally, maybe some things that were done that angered the employee. But that's what I know in this deal, that I know that something was said. And like you said, we all have to live by the consequences of our actions. And I've never, I probably had 12 bosses in my life. I've never even thought of the idea of dropping F-bombs and yelling at him because I know what's probably going to happen.
Yeah, I look at that, and it was too bad because there hadn't been any off-ice distractions this year, and one of the focus this season has been on the prospects. And before we wrap this up, one of the guys I wanted to ask about was Alex Formenton, because he's one of the few prospects, quite frankly, that we haven't seen here from Belleville. Would you like to see him at least play a game or two here in the last 10 or 12?
Well, we've seen enough of him in the NHL to know one thing is that he's got, and some people will laugh at this who've not seen Formenton, but if you've seen him play, you know that at least without the puck, he's Connor McDavid fast. I also like the angles he takes as a defensive player. You watch him on a forecheck, he's going to be a beauty. What I didn't know was that he had that offensive upside. I knew it was there in junior, but it was slow to develop, and now in the American Hockey League, he's been a stud this past season. So how can you not be excited about that prospect?
And one thing that's interesting is I spoke to Sean Donovan and Jesse Winchester about him in the Center's player development department, and they also said that he's been playing tough. He's got an edge to his game. And if he can bring that edge to the National Hockey League, then I think that bodes well for them for the future. That's a wrap on this week's Post Media panel. For Post Media, I'm Bruce Garriock with Steve Warren of the Sens Nation podcast.